All right, Trev, let's talk about Cisco specializations. Are they cloud ready? So we know Cisco has many different tracks. Enterprise, voice and video, which is renamed to collaboration. What else? Data center, security. These words sound so cool, especially back in the days. But do they play nice in the cloud sandbox? Let's talk about how these specializations match up with managing cloud-based networks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's funny, as you are mentioning this, I pulled up a list of all of Cisco's like specialty certifications because it's been like 5 years since I did a Cisco cert, and they changed a lot. And honestly, my take on this question is: are they relevant or will they translate well? And have they kept up? Yeah.
Since you're looking at those tracks, what do you think is the most relevant to AWS, for example?
You know, I'm seeing a few here that really stand out to me. And granted, I'm not super informed, but some that I'm looking at that look really cloud relevant off the top of my head here, or they have an IoT certification. That's even if you're doing IoT on-prem, IoT is very cloudy and going to be hyper relevant outside of just moving packets around for making applications work. They've got a DevOps and certification. Like really, it looks like a lot of them fall underneath this DevNet umbrella. All of those seem to be a little bit more cloud ready, or at least if they're data center focused, it's automation and very kind of application level focus. So those ones stand out to me, but additionally, the security certifications and specialties stand out to me just because security is not too dissimilar from on-premise in the cloud, and it needs to exist in the cloud too. So I think if you're interested in security, wouldn't be bad to think about looking and digging into some of their security specialty certs as well as these DevNet ones. The ones I might encourage somebody to not stay away from, but if your goal is to transition into cloud or work in cloud, the ones that might be a little less relevant could be the data center and enterprise certifications from Cisco. Again, just because those are much more focused on traditional networking. That said, I still think there's a lot of value in learning the protocols and the fundamentals that are in those certifications. I did those more than 10 years ago, and I don't think I would be where I'm at now if I didn't set those fundamentals of learning routing protocols and switching.
Right. That's a good thing you mentioned, security. And I quite agree, because if you're going to manage next generation firewalls or IPS or email or web proxy, you don't really deal with interfaces. You deal with policies. You deal with rules. You deal with settings. You check the logs, the events, etc. That's how you manage cloud policies.
That's right.
No
it's
link
rules, it's logs, it's certifications or certs and loading that onto different things to inspect and decrypt traffic. It's all the same technology, and you nailed it. It's the same way of configuring it, even with a policy. And I think that's a great pickup because I want folks that maybe if you're working in the data center, or like maybe you want to be in cloud, but the first job opportunity you're given is to work in the data center. Like that's great. Like that's still amazing. And especially if you get exposure to these technologies like firewalls or load balancers or Internet of Things that are technologies that can be hosted anywhere, on premise or in the cloud. I think that those are great things to specialize in. You know, I'll say it all day long. I keep saying the same thing over and over again, I feel like, but it really is like, I really want to reiterate, because I know some people feel nervous. I did when they're focusing on and learning things that they feel like won't help them grow into the future. But even if you're not, even if you're logging into Cisco switches every single day, like that is still going to be relevant. But I think while we're talking about certifications, they are a really great tool for somebody who maybe isn't getting exposure to the technologies they want to be exposed to in their day job, and they want to kind of break out of that. That's how I've always used them. I never get certified in stuff I'm already working on. I always say, I want to learn something new, and then I start with the certification and then try to fold that into my work.
Right, because you have two purposes. One is learning the technology and passing the certification. But more on certifications later. I have a special discussion, like dedicated discussion for certifications. One thing I would like to ask you about Cisco specialization is voice and video, because before there was a really big transition from PBX to IP telephony, and then the IP telephony or this technology has become software, more software. Okay, how is it related to the cloud?
It's a good question. So, particularly, it was voice, and what was the other technology you mentioned?
Voice and video. It's now called
Voice and
collaboration.
video. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. And definitely like under that umbrella term, you'll hear collaboration, or like even now there's more marketing terms like work from anywhere and all these other things that are really referring to like video conferencing and voice. So here is what has changed so much is that I used to configure actually not just IP phones, but before that I was working on, they called them POTS, plain old telephone systems. These old PBX devices and where you're configuring the phone lines to these different things. But that was a field that 10 years ago or longer really required a lot of heavy lifting, right? You're configuring every button on every phone in every office is configured by somebody somewhere, right? That is a lot of what I would call maybe kind of undifferentiated heavy lifting. And those systems, by the way, are still around and the core technologies are still there. Like SIP is a protocol that's used to kind of move this around that's still relevant even in the cloud context. But what's really changed a lot is almost all collaboration solutions now are some sort of SaaS solution. So we're talking on Zoom right now. There are many, many other great collaboration solutions that don't really require the same level of customization and personalization. We don't need to configure custom buttons for our handset because I can just send you a Zoom invite and we're talking in a couple of minutes, or we can huddle in Slack. So I think just the landscape has changed. And while this is VoIP and collaboration specifically, while this is an area where I still think that there's clearly expertise needed. If you look at jobs, there are people being hired for that skill set. That is one that I think over time will probably require fewer engineers to maintain, just because managing a Zoom solution for a company is requires so much less work than managing a VoIP solution for a company, which takes a team of engineers to do.